Sometimes love isn't enough. As an adoptive mom, people would often say this to me, as if to imply I couldn't love my son enough to change behaviors or heal his trauma, so I should probably just give up. At least that's how I took those four powerful words, which had buried themselves deeply in my mind, leading me to doubt my ability to parent my child. Sometimes love isn't enough. That is the truth. Oftentimes, you need love and powerful, personalized tools to raise a child who's experienced trauma and disrupted attachment, or a child who you're struggling to connect with. I am on a mission to help parents raising kids with a tricky past to show up with unconditional love and practical tools to lovingly manage even the most challenging of times. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Plus, if you like what you hear, I'd love for you to leave a review. Now let's get to the good stuff. Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. I am your host, Angie Grandt. I am a parent coach. I specialize in helping parents raising kids from a tricky past. I really love helping parents who are raising children who have experienced trauma because I know how incredibly hard that is as a parent to not only deal with our own traumas, but then show up the way that we need to for our kids. I know how hard it is because, quite frankly, I did not have the tools that I needed when my son needed me most, which meant that although I was really good at keeping my cool, I wasn't great at showing up for him the way that he needed me to, at least not early on until I got the right tools. So, in today's episode, I really want to talk about regulation and its role in healing trauma. So, I mentioned a couple of episodes that, yes, indeed, we can heal trauma. It is totally possible. There is a wealth of research to show that we can heal trauma. However, it is exceptionally hard to heal. And what I now know to be true is that trauma is exceptionally hard to heal. And in my own experiences, it was so hard to heal because oftentimes we're trying to use a traditional model of approaching a problem in a certain way and expecting progressive results. So, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that when our kids have trauma and they are showing us a slew of problematic behaviors, we tend to seek therapy to address the behaviors. So we take them to psychotherapy or get a psychiatrist to manage medications. We find a counselor, maybe an occupational therapist. We seek out all of these solutions to address the behavior problems. But there's one key element that as I continue to meet families, work with families, research myself, and understand trauma better, there's one key element that we must address in order to shift the needle of healing trauma. I know in my own case, I pursued every level of therapy that I could possibly get my hands on to help heal my son. So anywhere from psychiatrist visits monthly to weekly psychotherapy sessions up through daily intensive day treatment programs, inpatient units, residential units. I mean, we pursued everything. Oh, occupational therapy, so many things, so many ways to try to address trauma. But when I look back on what was it that was missing in all of these strategies, the biggest piece that was missing in all of these strategies and years of trying to heal trauma The piece that was missing was regulation. When I look back to, man, the drive to the intensive day treatment every day, that drive there was so dysregulating. I had so much evidence to see how very dysregulated my son was. He was in fight mode, which, if you were listening to me talk about that a couple of episodes ago, about the difference between fight, flight, and freeze and what that looks like in our kids, he was in full fight mode, which also put me in a heightened state of alertness for the entire ride there, the entire time he was there, and the entire ride back home. I was afraid for his safety and my safety, and the higher level thinking part of his brain couldn't possibly have been getting adequate blood flow because it was clear that he was in a heightened arousal state. Between the actions he was taking, the attempts at fleeing from the car, the words that were coming out of his mouth, it, looking back, it was so clear to me how very dysregulated he was and how unsafe he felt. Despite me trying to do the very best that I knew how to do in those moments, trying to ensure his safety, his body was showing me that he didn't feel safe at all. But I'd do it every day, take him to a program and come pick him up a few hours later, him being dysregulated that whole time. And I would often hear words like resistant to treatment, right? I worked so many different levels of treatment, and I would often get feedback that your son is resistant to treatment. And I always thought, like, what in the world do I do with that? What do I do when I'm seeing so much evidence of trauma, so many problematic behaviors, but provider after provider kept saying that same thing. Your son is resistant to treatment. Well, I know that that solution to shift the resistance, to work on the healing, was all about regulation. When we as humans are in this heightened state of alertness because we're anticipating that we're anticipating that things that we're going to be in danger, right? Our brain is giving us signals that we're not safe, which essentially means that that lower part of our brain stem, which is responsible for ensuring, well, our brain stem, and then a little bit higher up, that part of our brain that's responsible for our arousal state. But when we anticipate something scary is going to happen, or our brain anticipates that, and it's in that heightened arousal state, we're not using the higher level cortex of our brain. We're not effectively thinking and problem solving. And so, and we're dysregulated, right? When we're in that heightened state of arousal, you think about recently I shared a example about a bear, right? If we are anticipating or fearful that a bear is going to attack us, not anticipating, but if we're fearful that, we're under attack by a bear, we are not regulated in that moment. We are in a highly dysregulated state where we're ready to fight, flight, or freeze at any moment. And there's no talking that can talk us out of that. So, what do we actually need to do to help get our kids to a regulated state? Well, there are several key things that we can do to help get our kids to a much more regulated state that can help them be in a place where we can help heal their trauma. But it requires first for us as parents to be regulated. If we ourselves are in that heightened state of arousal where we are ready to pounce or flee or freeze at any moment, I believe that it's impossible or next to impossible for us to help regulate our kids. And so it first starts with us. It first starts with us figuring out what our body needs to feel more regulated. It might be having someone with us that helps us feel safe, which could be a partner, a spouse, a family member. But having somebody that we know that is calm and regulated, who we can count on to help keep us safe too, I believe is key. Having somebody that you can trust to help regulate you is the first step to helping our kids. The next thing that we need is, like I said, we ourselves need to be regulated, but we need to have our needs met. We need to be getting adequate rest and nutrition. We need to be eating well, sleeping well. And our body needs to breathe. When when we're in that heightened state of arousal and our heart is racing faster because we're ready to fight or flight, or we are, whatever it is, our our body is preparing for for a threat. When our body is in that place, we're not breathing at a relaxed, regulated rate. And so even just starting there, making sure we're well rested, making sure that we are hydrated, that we have what we need, and breathing is necessary to help calm our systems down so that we can show up in the way that we need for our kids. So that's your first task, is to check in with yourself. Are your needs met at a level that you can help regulate yourself? Because if you're feeling dysregulated, then take a step outside of that situation and figure out how to regulate yourself so that you can show up for your kids. Once we as parents are regulated, then it's up to us to step up for our kids and not address the behaviors, because the behaviors are just a symptom of their trauma. We had talked in previous episodes about asking better questions. And when we're asking ourselves better questions, it's so much easier to see that this defiant, argumentative, sneaky, rule breaking, law breaking, whatever it might be, behavior is not our child's, misbehaving, but instead it's our child screaming at us that they're hurt, they're scared, they're dysregulated. So we have to be able to look at the behavior through a different lens, through that questioning of what has happened to you. Because when we can do that, when we can regulate ourselves, when we can ask better questions, we'll be better able to help our kids feel safe, to feel regulated. So regulating yourself, asking better questions, and then really noticing our kids' breathing, noticing their level of arousal. Some strategies to consider at this moment, right? So we're dealing with a behavior that we are deciding is a reflection of their trauma. And again, I know I've talked about this a lot, but oftentimes our kids' behaviors do not look like a reflection of their trauma. But I'm just asking you to please humor me as we work through this trauma together. And let's just pretend that all of the behaviors are a reflection of their trauma, just for a while until we heal the trauma. And then you can decide if the behaviors are them deciding to be bad, right? Then decide. But for now, let's just pretend that all of the behaviors are a reflection of their trauma. Because when we look at their behaviors through that trauma lens and say, they stole a credit card, I wonder what happened to them that would cause them to feel like they should take from somebody else. I know that my child has a good heart, but what happened to them that would lead them to be so out of integrity that they would take somebody else's credit card? It's not because they're a bad kid. It's not because they wanted to hurt somebody. It is most likely because they're out of integrity, because their sense of self-worth and lovability was damaged somewhere along the line. Or our child is yelling at us that they don't want to do their homework and we can't make them and they're just going to be happy if they fail school and maybe they'll drop out anyways, right? That can drive us crazy. We feel strongly that our kids must be in school. And I'm not saying that we don't encourage or expect our kids to go to school. That's not it at all. But when those behaviors are a reflection of their trauma and we keep reacting to the behaviors like their behaviors, you're going to keep, you're going to stay stuck in that hamster wheel. So again, regulating yourself, asking yourself better questions, and then showing up for your kids in a way that just your only goal is to help them feel safe. To help them feel safe and feel that they are worthy and lovable. So, what does this look like? Well, I think first, it looks like not reacting or even responding or even discussing their behaviors for a little while. Because if each time you try to talk to your child about missing homework or their messy room, or they left a sticky mess in the kitchen, or they stole somebody's cash from their purse, or they broke a window at school, or whatever it might be, if you continue trying to address those behaviors while your child is in this heightened state of arousal, you're really talking to their brainstem, and their brainstem does not understand language. Their brainstem is designed to keep them safe, to detect threats, and to quickly cause a biological response in their body to react to a perceived threat. And you might think that talking to them about missing homework is not a perceived threat, but when our kids have experienced trauma, many, many, many things that seem pretty tame to you can be perceived as a threat to our kids. And so until we can do the hard, persistent work to get our kids out of that heightened state of arousal, until we can get our kids to a place where they are more regulated than not, you can keep addressing the behaviors all you want, but it's not going to go anywhere. And honestly, it's probably going to keep perpetuating the behaviors, right? Imagine that a child who is in this heightened state of arousal and we are trying to talk to them about missing homework, which creates a bigger fear response in them, which means they're less likely to hand in their homework because they're now in a more heightened state of arousal. And the cycle continues and continues versus being able to help our kids feel safe and regulated and calm in a way that our kids can actually hear what we're saying to them. Because they're not hearing your words until they feel safe and until they feel regulated. So, helping our kids feel calm, right? We find out that something happened or we experience a behavior with them. What if we responded to that behavior by regulating ourselves and just helping our kids feel safe? Safe that they made a big mistake and that they can regulate after that mistake because they are lovable, even when they screw up. They are worthy, even when they forgot to hand in their homework for the 10th time this week. When we can help our kids feel regulated, we will shift the needle to getting better interactions with them, better responses from them, and the things that have been driving you crazy, you'll be better able to address them. But as long as we keep trying to address them when our kids are dysregulated, you're going to be stuck in this hamster wheel. So this is my challenge for you is as your kids' behaviors are driving you crazy, I want you to first check in with yourself. Please don't react to the behavior. It's not helping. And instead, check in with yourself and make sure you are regulated. And when you've decided that you're regulated, you're calm, you're breathing, then ask yourself, what happened to my child that might have led to this behavior? And I'm not expecting you to know a specific event, like, oh, when they were 2 years old, they, you know, saw a scary event and that led them to not handing in their homework. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, when we can ask ourselves that question about what happened to my child that led to this behavior, perhaps the answer might be, wow, my child experienced significant trauma when they were younger, or experienced disrupted placement at a time when they needed connection more than anything else. My child experienced a disrupted placement at that key time in development, which has led them to being in this heightened state of arousal all the time, or almost all the time, which leads to them not being able to follow simple instructions, leads to them not being able to follow through with things I know they're capable of. But when I can look at my kiddo through that lens, through saying, like, wow, they're really struggling to process what happened to them, and they're really in a heightened state of arousal. They're dysregulated. What can I do to help re-regulate my kiddo? When we can look at our kids that way and ask better questions, we'll move towards better connections with our kids, better responses, less behaviors. So that's my challenge for you this week. I can't wait to hear your thoughts about this. Feel free to reach out to me via email or book a free consult. I would love to see how I can help your family really implement these changes because I know what I'm sharing with you is hard. I am encouraging you to look at things in a way that doesn't feel like it's possible to stop the behaviors because I know that you're stuck in the chaos because I was too. But book a free consult. Let me see how I can help your family really make these changes. And I have a great lesson plan that really will really help you to put this into play every day with your family. So that's it. I can't wait to hear your thoughts about this episode, and we will connect soon. I hope that you found this episode so incredibly powerful. Thank you for joining us for Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. If you resonated with what you heard here, please subscribe to this podcast and give us a review. You can also follow us on all the socials. Check the show notes for all the details about how to start tackling behaviors and creating a powerful, loving relationship with your child, a child who needs your love the most. And if your gut's telling you that it's time for a change now, book a free consult. I'd love to help you love unconditionally and show you that you have that power within you.